All right, let's cut across to the latest news break that is coming in. America has come and clarified. U.S. Secretary of War made it very clear we will end this war on our terms. This is not Iraq. This is not an endless war. Operation is destroy Iranian nuclear weapons. He further went on to state that former regime had chance to make a deal, but Tehran was stalling it. Listen in to the latest that's coming in.
To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes. Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners.
All right, you just heard the U.S. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, make it very clear this is not an endless war. As per the Secretary of War, he made it clear that this wasn't started by the United States. The regime had a chance to make a deal, but Tehran was stalling it, so practically forcing the hand of America with Israel in a joint operation. The operation is eventually to destroy Iranian nuclear weapons. All right, so that's the latest coming in. I want to quickly bring in our senior journalist, someone who's been tracking the crisis very closely in West Asia, Sandeep Unithan, who's in the studio with me. Sandeep, you have now America coming in, and I would think the big ticket announcement is where he also said that this is not an endless war, this is not Iraq, and practically, as per America, their hand was forced.
Absolutely, Preeti. And it's very interesting. He would make the comparison with the 2003 US invasion of Iraq. That was a long, costly deployment of the United States. 20 years is what they spent, several $1 trillion. Thousands of US soldiers died in that operation. Here, it was meant to be a regime change operation. Now, the big question is that could they change the regime through just airstrikes? And, in that statement, Pete Hegseth seems to indicate that they've already achieved some of their objectives by saying that the former regime, for instance, he says that he uses that word to imply that they've already achieved some of their objectives by, changing the regime, going into this war. He says that we didn't start this war, but we are finishing it. And this is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change. Those are his words there. So it's very interesting that the US already seems to be looking for an off-ramp to say, look, we've already done what we had to do. We've destroyed their nuclear facilities. We've changed the regime in a sense. So, Do you see a bit of backpedaling there? Because, Sandeep, because yes, that's what it seems to suggest. Because, when the military action started in the form of airstrikes, it was made very clear that this was to change and flip the regime in Iran. Absolutely. And now they seem to indicate, from Pete Hegseth's statement, it seemed to indicate that they've already achieved that regime change that they wanted to, which is to assassinate Ayatollah Khamenei. And that's it's interesting that a lot of what happened in the last 3 days, Preeti, is something that they didn't plan for. The fact that they never assumed that Iran would retaliate the way it did after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's assassination, that they would expand the theater of conflict into so many other Gulf nations to attack commercial interests over there. So this is clearly the US attempting some amount of damage control, looking for an off-ramp to try and
So number one, Sandeep, if you have to
accomplished.
break it down, because this is also, with what President Trump has been saying in the last 48 hours, there's been mixed messaging.
Yes.
But this is very clear, because there seems to be a fair amount of backpedaling in the, saying it's a limited war. We are not looking at in Iraq because there is criticism back home as well.
Right.
This will have economic implications already, that can be seen in markets across the world, and with oil, will have a bearing. Number three, where he says, and I want to reflect back onto the statement that where he says that the regime has been changed in itself, by taking
Yes.
out the top supreme leader, America and Israel seem to read it as their objective achieved.
Right, absolutely, and they're just looking for a chance here to put in a mission accomplished signboard somewhere, hang that somewhere, just as George
So are
Bush
we
did
now looking
after,
at, are we now looking at days?
We're looking at possibly even hours, I would think, that the US certainly didn't bargain for this level of Iranian retaliation. So they would possibly at some point, this is purely looking at Pete Hegseth's statement, that they're looking for an off-ramp here. They are saying that, look, we achieved a lot of what we planned to do, which is to change the regime, to...
Is it charting out an exit course?
It is looking for an exit course very clearly. And that's, based on what Pete Hegseth has just said. One has to wait and see what President Donald Trump now weighs in. How is he going to react to what's been going on in West Asia over the last couple of hours?
Sandeep, before we cut across to the next bit of breaking news, I want you to maybe, how much of impact on what we just heard by America could be generated from as a pressure point of other Gulf countries that continue to be under sustained attack by Israel, by
sure
Iran?
The Gulf countries, they must be furious, Preeti, at this moment. We're seeing a little, sense of that coming out on social media platforms. But the fact is that a lot of the Gulf nations over there, the Arab monarchies, are deeply vulnerable. They've been caught in the line of fire. This is not a war that they started out to, push the United States into, right? This is a war that they were dragged into. They have no choice.
And the very reason that America had bases in these countries,
Yes.
the official explanation was to protect these nations.
Absolutely.
And it's counterproductive right
Today,
now.
those bases, these Gulf nations are under attack because of those very same bases. Now they're asking the United States, look, you were meant to protect us. Where is your umbrella? You have cruise missiles, drones, easily penetrating all of these so-called missile defenses. And we are vulnerable.
So at this juncture, Sandeep, when we shift into our next, news break that is coming in, one can read this backpedaling and possibly that America bit off more than it could chew.
Yes, and looking for an opportunity to say
To exit.
mission accomplished.
Mission
Yes.
accomplished and coming out
And yes.
speaking of it as a win. And we
Yes.
could also already hear it in the statement there, which was delivered. But of course, viewers, all of this will need to be taken in when President Trump speaks. And a lot will also depend on that. Is he going to take a contrarian line, or this is a well thought out strategy by America? We know in a couple of hours, the next set of news breaks that are coming in. And that is how India is reacting to all that is going on in West Asia. So much coming in terms of, has India really picked a side in this conflict and in this war? Prime Minister has had two important telephonic conversations today. Let's break that news right away. Prime Minister Modi has had two important telephonic conversations today. He spoke with the King of Bahrain, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. He also spoke with the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Prime Minister condemned the attacks on both these countries and discussed the well-being of Indian community in both these countries. Prime Minister Modi has just tweeted, had a productive telephonic conversation with the King of Bahrain. Mind you, viewers, Bahrain has come under constant attack. Civilian installations, residential areas have come under attack by Iran. Prime Minister further goes on to say, His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, he has spoken to him. India condemns the attack on Bahrain and stands in solidarity with its people in this very difficult hour. I thank him for the steadfast support extended to the Indian community in Bahrain. The Prime Minister had already spoken to, of course, the head of state where UAE is concerned. Many are looking at this development as a possible taking aside or picking aside. Is it that? Because twice over in the last 48 to 72 hours, the Prime Minister has also said that he wants de-escalation on both counts, that India is looking at peace. But that's the latest bit of news that is coming in. Two important conversations that were had by the Indian Prime Minister, Prime Minister Modi. One, of course, with His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa of Bahrain, the King of Bahrain, where India spoke to him, condemned the attacks on Bahrain, and also thanked him for standing by a sizable Indian community that lives in Bahrain. Lots of political interpretation of how India has reacted in the last 72 hours, Sandeep. Can we say India has picked a side in this conflict, even though twice over Prime Minister has made it very clear that there needs to be de-escalation on either sides of the divide, and peace needs to prevail.
Well, Preeti, in this case, India is friends with all the countries of the region. We have no enemies here, right? All the Gulf monarchies, particularly Saudi Arabia and UAE, are very close friends of India, or almost allies. Partners.
So is Iran.
And so is Iran. So it's clearly a thing about a fight between friends, and India wants everyone to come onto the same side and possibly, look for peace, look for a way out, because we are fully aware of the fact that there are Indian nationals in the line of fire as well. And the Gulf is a place where a lot of India's oil imports come from. Some of our top oil importers are there. We source oil from Saudi Arabia, from Kuwait, from Iraq. These are three top oil suppliers to us. Nearly 50% of our oil comes from these GCC countries, the Gulf Cooperative Council countries, the 6 Arab monarchies.
Sandeep, it is a tightrope walk diplomatically for India.
It is.
While there was a fair amount of pressure politically, where many are reading this as possibly taking sides, one also has to reflect on the fact that the Prime Minister was in Israel. And, as Air India One touchdown in Delhi, there was already a full-blown conflict that had started where West Asia was concerned with Israel. But having said that, till now, there is no clear side that India seemingly has taken. Yes, he has spoken, the Prime Minister has spoken to UAE, has spoken to Bahrain. Not just that these countries are friends, but also sizable Indian population resides in countries like Bahrain and the UAE. The remittances that we get back from UAE are astronomical, and to safeguard the interest of Indian citizens is also paramount. We're going to cut across to Mayan Hoffman, who's been reporting from outside public shelters in Tel Aviv, Israel. Ms. Hoffman, Mayan, if you can quickly take us through what's the latest that is coming in terms of reaction. We just heard the Defense Secretary, of America make it very clear that this is a limited war. We are not looking like an Iraq-like situation. And he also seems to suggest that most of the targets of this joint operation between Israel and America have been met. What's the sense that you're picking up? Is there now de-escalation somewhere, or do you think that is what the grounds are being laid for?
Well, I actually think it's very interesting to hear, Secretary Hegseth's comments, especially given that what we're hearing from Defense Minister Israel Katz is exactly the opposite. Just about an hour or so ago, he sent out a bulletin letting people know that we are getting more weapons, preparing to strike harder in Iran. And as we're speaking, we're seeing IDF reports of new rounds of attacks happening in Iran. I do think that your journalist is correct in the fact that America does want to make sure that they have the ability to stop and take it out when the time comes. Without question, there's pressure from the Gulf states. Israel is hearing that too. These Gulf states are not used to the kind of attacks that Israel has received from Iran. And I will also say that Iran has been stepping up the attacks, making it harder for the Israeli population, who are then putting pressure to get the war to end. Tonight starts the Jewish holiday of Purim, which is supposed to be a very festive holiday. Kids dressed up in costumes, people to have fun, parties. None of that's going to be happening because the country is effectively locked down. Just about a few hours ago, we had a direct hit from an Iranian missile in Beirut, which is in southern Israel. That was a direct hit outside some residential homes. More than 30 people were injured in that attack, most of them moderately. So there's quite a bit of tension going on here in the country.
So the tension you're saying is while the kind of commentary coming in, especially from America by the Defense Secretary, looks at de-escalation. But Mayan, just take us through the very latest there in terms of the retaliation that is coming in from Iran, how IDF is also hitting back. What are you picking up? Are we looking at a heightened retaliation from Iran now?
Yeah, in the last 24 hours, we've seen an extremely high retaliation from Iran. They run a remarkable yesterday, Beit Shemesh, which is an area in central Israel, right outside Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. There was a direct strike on a religious institution, on a synagogue, and 9 people were killed. Those 9 names just released today, and burials have started. In addition, dozens there were injured as well. Some of them remain in critical condition. Our health ministry put out numbers this morning showing that around 700 people have gone to the hospital for treatment since the start of this war just a few days ago. A couple of hundred of them still remain in hospital. again, a handful
The
of them in
retaliation,
critical condition.
all right, it's escalating right now. Take care, Mayan. We're going to come back to you. Get yourself to a safe spot. Sandeep, I want to come back to you. I also want to quickly introduce in this conversation Geeta Mohan, our foreign affairs editor. Geeta, with what we are looking at in terms of the kind of statements that are coming in from the Secretary of War of America, there seems to be an exit strategy now being planned, is what Sandeep and I were discussing. But Sandeep, with what Mayan also added, that while the talks could, suggest de-escalation soon, but usually, for someone who's followed war in crisis such as this, it's that final last hours are always way more intense than what it usually, is earlier. So it corroborates with what also Mayan says, that it's getting really hot right now.
Right, absolutely. And, what Iran is doing is that it wants to negotiate from a position of strength, and they have expanded the theater of conflict, across West Asia. 2,500 kilometers sweep of territory from Cyprus to Oman is what they have targeted. It's unprecedented. It's never happened in the history of warfare that one country has targeted 10 other countries near simultaneously with waves of drones and missiles, right? And Iran has made a very big point there that they're not going to be cowed down by the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. And now they are ready for talks, but they will talk from a position of strength. And they are not going to kowtow or bend or bow in a way that the United States would have wanted them to surrender some of their, missile capabilities of the kind that you're seeing on the screen now. Those Shahed 136s, the ballistic missiles, all of these programs, Iran has created this triad of weapon systems, drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. Is something that Iran has created because it has no air force, it has no navy. So now the talks, I believe, given this wave of attacks, the fact is that Iran has proved its point. It has the capability to inflict punishment across a very large swath of territory.
And Iran's not backing down, because if you remember, twice over you've had President Trump, who's tried to insinuate that the Iranian leadership is trying to seek dialogue, and Iran has refuted that both times over. I want to quickly introduce Geeta Mohan before we cut across to the latest that's coming in. Geeta, you just heard the Secretary of War, where America is concerned, the kind of statements he's made it very clear that this is not an endless war. We're not looking like in Iraq, because there's a fair amount of pressure back home as well. There are economic compulsions to this, and also seeming to suggest that most of their targets, have been met, and to say that there is, a regime change. So by taking out the supreme leader, that they have effected a regime change, which wasn't what they started with. Is it an exit route strategy now?
Well, I do think it's an exit route, because I do not think they anticipated what's happening in West Asia, what they call the Middle East, and the kind of attacks that Iran has managed to succeed in. Despite the defense systems that most of the countries have, which are all provided by the United States of America, the breaches are massive, they're severe, and they really have taken on what Iran has taken on, what is unprecedented. Like Sandeep and I were talking about it earlier, and we were talking about it earlier in our edit meet as well, that one single country opening up a 12-front war, unimaginable, but also the fact that there's immense pressure on Donald Trump right now, with assessment that there are Americans in the Middle East who are stuck and stranded, they're civilians. A loss of life when it comes to forces and personnel is one thing. But if he loses civilians in the war, then it'll cost him
But Geeta, all of this is also bolstered.
Elections.
Yes, and all of this is also bolstered by the sheer fact that other Gulf countries now are a pressure point on President Trump to pull back, because the kind of sustained attack they are coming under.
Absolutely, Preeti. I don't think any of these Arab states were ready for this. Forget about Arab states, the people. This has always been known as the peace zone, or a very peaceful place, prosperous, money, you want to go have fun, have a holiday, that's the place you'd go to. And suddenly they just don't know what's hitting.
So basically, with what Sandeep just added and Geeta, two in-house experts, it seems that America and Israel, at least with how things are panning out right now, has bitten off possibly a little more than it could chew. And now is looking at, and we're just going by the statement of the Secretary of War that we just heard, a possible exit strategy in all of this, suggesting that we have attained, our target, and this is not an endless war, while Iran continues to retaliate. Geeta was in Iran a few days ago, and actually just touched down when the entire crisis started to unfold. But what now? And Sandeep and Geeta, both of you can quickly come in on this, because it seemed to the taking out of a supreme leader a very simplistic, brutal answer to a very, very complex problem. And by taking out the supreme leader didn't quite mean that you effected a regime change. There is already somebody in place. So who next after Khamenei? Well, 88-member panel assembly of experts are already in place to choose a supreme leader. We're going to play out all those graphics there, and you can, read it out while I'm going to get Geeta to come in and explain for our viewers. Geeta, who next? Because you have someone who has already taken over, who is, can say more conservative, more fanatical than Ali Khamenei himself. And then you have his son, who possibly is being bloodied into taking over.
Well, Mojtaba Khamenei might not be the supreme leader. There's an entire council, and that council will look at who the next leader is going to be, because we do know that the supreme leader is the prime target of Israel, no matter who that person is going to be. So if Mojtaba is made the supreme leader, he will be the next target for Israel. I suppose after Khamenei's family, the daughter, son-in-law, grandchild, all being killed, doesn't seem like, Mojtaba Khamenei would be put to risk, his life would be put to risk. But then you have Arafi. Arafi is a very important person. He is part of the 3-member council that
he's already the interim
that has been created.
leader.
And he, in all probability, could stay on. We'll have to wait and see, because if this war turns out to be one where they go back to the negotiating table in peace talks, then they might look at Mojtaba yet again. But if not, then it's a different scenario altogether. Lack of time. So I just wanted you to wanted to say one thing, that after Khamenei's death, there are throngs of people in the streets of Iran. Did America factor that in? Because now if they're looking at a strike and they don't want to kill people, because then people will turn against America and Israel, they have no option.
And also to then suggest that the onus lies on the streets, for a resistance to throw
just
over.
Come take over.
Yeah, it doesn't quite happen like that, because we did see after the supreme leader was taken out, there might have been celebrations, but there was also deep mourning, and people did come out, in support as well. So we are giving you the options there. Geeta spoke about two. Let me quickly take you through the others. Ayatollah Ghulam Hussein Mohseni, head of Iran's judicial long-standing hardline cleric, enjoys strong institutional support, could be an option. Mohammad Mehdi, ultra hardline clerical voice, member of Assembly of Experts, known for his worldview, critical of the West, heads Islamic Sciences Academy of Qom. Hassan Khomeini, grandson of Ruhollah Khomeini, seen as more moderate. Acceptance is uncertain though. So Geeta, whatever the scenario, there are multifaceted layers for somebody to easily come and take over that position. So what we are looking at is definitely not a regime flip.
They said the end goal is regime change. Sandeep and I have been discussing this for the past 48 hours. This is not regime change, taking one Khamenei out, because they have 4 rungs ready, prepared to take over. One gets killed, the other comes. And we've been seeing it for some time now, that Israelis have been assassinating, and they've just been replacing. And they're not replacing them with some young officer. They still have the older lot.
Yeah,
and
there is a clear line of
a very
succession.
strong older. Wahidi, who's taken over as the IRGC chief, is a very, very old hand and has been a part of the intelligence agency, the army, for the longest. So,
Geeta, would you stay with that thought? I want to quickly cut across to the next news break that's coming in, because it seems Iranian media is confirming Ayatollah Khamenei's wife has succumbed to injuries. That's the latest that is coming in. We don't quite know when the funeral is going to take place of Ayatollah Khamenei, but the latest that we are breaking right now is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's wife is also dead and has succumbed to injuries from the US-Israel attack. This is being confirmed as I speak by the Iranian media. It's not just Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Many members of his family were also killed, assassinated alongside Ayatollah Khamenei. Sandeep, all of this will also create a sense of deep sympathy and empathy where Iran is concerned.
Right, absolutely, Preeti. And the fact is that, I think the US miscalculated gravely in this case. As Geeta was mentioning, they spoke about regime change, but everything that we've seen over the last 48 hours seemed to suggest anything but. This is regime continuity. And the two big factors that I've always been saying that would play a very crucial role in whether Iran could survive this is magazine depth. That is, how much of ordnance do you have? Do you have enough missiles? Do you have enough, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, all of that? And the other is leadership depth. Now, Iran has come out by having depth in both leadership and in, the arsenal that they've had, the missile and drone arsenal. So, in a sense, it has actually helped them overcome this wave of unprecedented strikes by the United States and Israel. And they have, in a sense, turned the sympathy on the Arab street, on the Muslim street, in favor of Iran. This is exactly what the United States hadn't banked on. The fact that if they went into strike at Iran, they did not anticipate the conflict to expand like this, become a global issue, a kind of a rallying cry for the Muslim world. And Iran has seemed to have come out on tops in this, even after attacking the Gulf countries.
I'm going to just quickly take our viewers through what has been the human cost of this. Of course, there's an economic cost to it, but what has been the human cost of this? Let's quickly cut across to that in terms of how West Asia has bled over the course of the last 72 hours. In Israel alone, 9 have been killed, 121 injured, is what is being confirmed and reported. Iraq, there have been 2 killed, 5 injured. Bahrain has confirmed that there have been 4 previous injuries. Kuwait, 1 killed, 32 injured. UAE, 3 killed, 58 injured. Oman, 5 injured. Iran, and that's a number that is astounding, viewers. Look at that, 555 civilians have been killed, and out of that is a heartbreaking number of over 120 young girls when a girls' school was bombed, and over 700 injured. What we're just putting out right there is just the human cost of it. There is an impact, and I want to draw our viewers who've been even looking at the economic impact of it. Look how the Indian markets have bled as well. Well, closed in deep red on Monday. The Sensex Nifty sunk over 1.2%. Each Sensex settles 1,048 points lower. Nifty below 24,900. Sharp decline, wiped off over 6.5 lakh crore from total markets, and that possibly is also the economic cost of it. Let's look at the US stock market, because there is economic pressure on President Trump as well on multiple accounts. US stock futures plunged on Monday. Dow Jones Industrial Average future tumbled 1.6%. Contracts on S&P 500 sank 1.7%. Geeta, also with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, there is a clear economic implication that there is, and of course one can't forget the human cost.
Well, absolutely. The fact that there have been loss of lives, not just some of the members of the forces, certain people in West Asia, but look at the school attack. They can keep saying that it was a mistake, but over 80 kids, young girls being killed is absolutely horrific, and America will have to answer. There should be an inquiry. They should tell us exactly what really happened over there in Iran. Having said that, it's the economic pain point. Why do you think Iran has hit out at the Arab world and hit at places beyond the air bases? For everybody to feel the economic cost of war. Shutting down Strait of Hormuz, economic cost of war. The fact that Aramco facility has been shut down, operations have shut, it's huge. So no production, increase in crude Brent, increase in oil prices. Everybody's life is going to go topsy-turvy if they do not come to the negotiating table. And so right now we're looking at an off-ramp. Let's see whether
it does seem so, at least with the kind of commentary that is coming in from the United States of America. They are looking for an exit strategy in all of this. This is very important because at times like this, there is a heavy pall, which we call the fog of war, and lots of misinformation flies about in that, which is taken as the gospel truth. We want to dispel a little bit of that information. We fact-checked it. Number one, there was news earlier, which many have taken, that it has really happened. No, it's not happened. We're going to bust that. US base in Turkey attacked by Iran. It's fake news. So if somebody's saying this, it's fake, don't buy it. The second, fake news that we'd like to flag is there was a huge explosion near the US base in Iraq. Fake. So, if you've read that piece of news, it's fake news somewhere down the line, peddled in this fog of war. Number 3, Iran has claimed 560 US military personnel killed. Fake. Till now, we do not have, any confirmation in terms of what are the casualties that US military personnel have faced, even though you heard the Secretary of War a short while ago where he said, yes, there were casualties, they need to be confirmed, but it's nowhere near that figure that at least is being peddled in the form of what Iran is suggesting. For the latest news break coming in from Dubai International Airport, well, good news coming in. Dubai Airport has now announced limited resumption of flights from Dubai and other airports starting from Monday evening, which is this evening. Emirates will begin operating a limited number of flights commencing on the evening of the 2nd March. All other flights remain suspended until further notice. So limited operations are now all set to begin from the Dubai International Airport. However, these only limited number of flights, we are yet to get the details of what these flights are, will start taking off from this evening, while all other operations remain indefinitely suspended. All right, let's quickly move on, viewers, because there is a fair amount of political commentary back home where it comes down to the escalating crisis we see in West Asia. Has India diplomatically picked a side in this conflict? We are friends with both Iran, America, as well as Iran. There seems to be political commentary that suggests we could have picked a side. As the war broke out in West Asia, India was quick, though, to strike a cautionary note. The Ministry of External Affairs said it was deeply concerned by developments urging all sides to exercise restraint, prioritize civilian safety, respect sovereignty, and return to dialogue. Prime Minister Modi followed up with a direct outreach, dialing Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan to condemn the attack on UAE, condole the lives lost, and convey India's solidarity. He thanked the UAE leadership for ensuring the safety of Indians and reiterated India's support for de-escalation and peace. Today, again, the Prime Minister described the West Asia situation as concerning, stressed that India favors dialogue and peace. Has India, though, chosen a side? Well, the opposition does seem to think so, especially with the kind of political commentary that is coming in.
विश्व में चल रहे अनेक तनावों को लेकर भारत की सोच स्पष्ट ही है। हमने सदैव शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखने का आह्वान किया है और जब दो लोकतंत्र साथ खड़े होते हैं तो शांति की आवाज और भी सशक्त हो जाती है। पश्चिम एशिया की वर्तमान स्थिति हमारे लिए गहरी चिंता का विषय है। भारत डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी के माध्यम से सभी विवादों का समाधान का समर्थन करता है। इस क्षेत्र में मौजूद सभी भारतीय नागरिकों की सुरक्षा के लिए हम सभी देशों के साथ मिलकर काम करते रहेंगे।
All right, let's quickly cut across to GVL Narasimha Rao, former member of Rajya Sabha, joining us live at this moment. Mr. Rao, there is a sense where, of course, the opposition seems to suggest, and I want to ask you, has India picked a side in this conflict? Sir, you're on mute.
You have just played on television what Honorable Prime Minister said about the conflict in about the attacks that have happened and about the conflict between U.S. Israel on one side and Iran on the other side, and you have seen how India is seeking restraint on both sides, some kind of a dialogue, diplomacy, and a solution to the problems and an end to the conflict. Because we have we are heavily vested in peace in this region. where certainly we need peace all over the world, but we certainly have a greater interest in this region. We have nearly 10 million, over a crore people living in the West Asia, Indians settled there, working there. Also, I think it's important for the global commerce, global stability. So India has made its position very clear. We need peace and stability, and for us, certainly India's interests are paramount. We are certainly, if you look at the policy, that was foreign policy that was pursued even in the earlier Manmohan Singh regime, we have always, the UPA government on several occasions, at least I can count 3 occasions, in 2005, 2006 and 2009, government of India under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh voted along with the US, Russia and many other countries against against Iran's nuclear program. So therefore, I see this as a continuity of the policy. India has its own interests. India has to protect its interests, and we have a role to play as far as the world peace and stability are concerned.
Well, thank you, GVL Narasimha Rao, for clarifying on that there isn't a shift in policy, but many because we haven't outrightly criticized the taking down of a leader, an international leader like Ayatollah Khamenei, and we haven't criticized that, reading as possibly picking a side and speaking to Bahrain and speaking to UAE, sir.
No, I think, you see, as I mentioned, for us, our policy is governed by our own interests, and India has made its position. Seeing anything more is possibly not required at this stage. India has called for a restraint. We have not supported any action. We have certainly called for diplomacy and dialogue to settle the conflict. An end to this conflict is in global interest, is in world interest, is in India's interest, and that is what we have called for.
Fair point, sir, and thank you for coming on air and clarifying that for our viewers. Appreciate it. I want to cut across now to Mr. Agha Syed Ruhullah Mehendi. He's the MP from Jammu and Kashmir National Conference. He's been very vocal, especially with the kind of protests that are taking place across India, not just in Jammu and Kashmir, where it comes down to members of the Shia community coming out and protesting against the joint operation of Israel and America of taking out not just the supreme leader of Iran, but someone who was viewed as a spiritual, religious Shia Muslim leader. Thank you, Mr. Mehendi, for joining us. Your quick comments. There have been protests across India as well in support of Iran.
And they ought to be. They are pretty much natural reaction to the aggression and the murder of a spiritual leader, as you said, a religious leader, not only political figure who happened to be a head of a sovereign nation. One needs to understand people draw spiritual, teachings and followed him spiritually, and he was widely followed throughout the world. And not only, it's not about the Shia sect of the Muslim community. He was loved and regarded by the Muslim community throughout, and people who love freedom and liberty, those who believe in human dignity across religious denominations. I came across the commentary or the expressions of people who belong to the Hindu community as well, who condemned this act of aggression, act of terrorism outrightly, and this reaction is pretty much natural. And one fails to understand why our state, that is the Union of India, has clamped down on the peaceful protests, which threatened no security, no law and order situation in our country. One fails to understand, or is it that the regime that is governing this country, our country at the moment, wants to please the masters that it has bowed to, unfortunately, internationally as well, which is the imperialistic powers of America and Israel.
Mr. Mehendi, I want to ask you one quick question before I let you go. These are troubling times globally, geopolitically, and India needs to walk a very tightrope walk diplomatically. Iran has been a friend of India, but then so has Israel been. And to speak of de-escalation and for peace is that either sides of the divide de-escalate.
It's not a question of tightrope. It's the question of clarity. It's the question of principles. We believed in the principles of a world which is ruled by law, which is governed by law, in which the liberty is respected, the sovereignty of nations is respected. We, the nation of India and the nation of Iran. Has many commonalities even in the modern history. See, we were not friends with the imperialistic Iran till 1979 India. We always forget this fact. We became friends with a republic of Iran which challenged the imperialistic powers post 1979, because India and Iran has this in common, that we draw our inspiration in fighting the imperialistic powers. That's why we share commonalities, and that's what we respected, and that was seen in the relationship between Iran and India. But unfortunately, for the last 10, 11 years, this regime in India, this BJP government, for its hate for Muslims, has not only affected the domestic politics, it has affected the foreign policy of the nation as well. We have now slowly started to become close to imperialistic powers, those who challenge the status quo, those who challenge the order of the world, those who challenge the liberty of the sovereign nations. And we have drawn ourselves away from the friends, those who believe in freedom and liberty of the nations and the dignity of the nations. And this is very unfortunate for us.
I appreciate, sir, taking the time out and joining us. We wanted to put out both sides of the argument in front of our viewers, where it came down to how India has reacted to this crisis, which is continuing to unfold in Western Asia. You heard the point of view of the government, and you've now heard the point of view of the opposition, at least, where it came down to how India has reacted.